struggle. Exodus chapter 12. Any liberated people that God has delivered, it is mandatory by God that they have some type of commemoration to remember their bondage and to remember what God has brought them from, so they won't return back to the place that they got out of. Exodus the 12th chapter in the first verse. So when the Lord was delivering the children of Israel out of Egypt, out of bondage, he made a particular rule and he wanted them to go back. He wrote this down in Exodus chapter 12 and 1. Every year, the first month of the year. Now, they have a celebration that we set for Black history, that they do it in February. And I like to call it Hebrew history, that they do it in February. But in fact, the proper month that you should commemorate deliverance is the month of January. The first month of the year is when deliverance should be celebrated by those that were Hebrews and that were bound. Get me the book of Exodus, the 12th chapter, first verse, Exodus chapter 12 and 1. And let's all say thank the Lord. 12th chapter, first verse. Sister Cheryl. 12th chapter, first verse. Right. 12th chapter, first verse. Let's read it together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron. It shall be the first month of the year. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month, they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb. Y'all reading or y'all just looking? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him, his neighbor, next to him, take it according. You take it out from the sheep or from the goat, and you shall kill it. You shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. So you all read this story before, right? Said you're going to get out of Egypt, and tonight I'm going to bring you out, but I want you to kill a lamb, put the blood over the doorpost, and when I see the blood, I'm going to pass over. They did that one time. But every year, the same time of year, they were supposed to do that same thing and rehearse that again so that they could always remember how God brought them out of deliverance. So some people wonder, and they ask the question, why is it necessary to have every year a Black History Month to commemorate or to talk about slavery and liberation? The Lord ordained that for Israel. Anytime they were in Egypt, they were supposed to go back. Anytime they were in bondage, especially this coming out of Egypt, and remember. And God said to them in Exodus chapter 13 and 3, look at Exodus 13 and 3. And Moses said unto the people, remember this day in which ye came out from Egypt. Let's say it again on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, read it again. Say it again. All right, let me hear y'all read it like y'all know what you're saying. Let's do it one more time. You remember the day that you came out of Egypt. I don't want you to ever forget it. Don't forget your struggle. Don't forget what you get through. And I want you to remember the day you came out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. So not just Egypt, but any house of bondage that you're in, I want you to remember that. All right? For by strength of hand, the Lord brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. This day came ye out in the month of Abib. Now, not only did God want them to do that, he said, in that same month, I want y'all not to eat any leavened bread. I want you to take and I want you to eat a certain meal to remember what y'all ate in bondage before you came out. So it's necessary for you to every year have a celebration, and in that celebration, I want y'all to eat the old food that you ate before you came out. So that's why it's so important that we have a year of celebration, and we have what we call Black History Month, and go back and eat some of those old foods and remember some of those same things that we came out, because that was something that God gave the Hebrews to do anytime they was in Egypt, and this is our second type of Egypt. So that was very important. I want you to see the biblical significance of that. And then I want you to see why God wanted them to continue to remember that. And that became known not as Black history, but that became known not as Hebrew history. That celebration, what was the name that was given to that? What did it become known as? Oh, girl, you know what you're talking about. Say it again. Jeannie, tell them.
Passover.
Passover. Man, y'all give Jeannie a hand. It became known as the Passover. All right. Hebrews chapter 11 and 28, through faith, he kept the Passover. He kept the Passover and the sprinkling of the blood, lest he that destroyed the firstborn should touch them. So he kept that. That was specifically something that the Lord told them. And not only did he do that, in Jesus' days, in Matthew 26, Matthew the 26th chapter in the 17th verse, because there are those that may question why is this necessary. Matthew 26 and 17, look what it says, 26, 17. Now the first day of the feast of the unleavened bread, that's that eating that special bread to remember what they ate before they came out. The disciples came to Jesus saying unto him, where wilt thou that we prepare for thee to eat the what? Passover. And he said, go into the city for such a man and say unto him, the master said, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at the house with my disciples. So Jesus also, and the whole Passover, you all know what the Passover was about? Let's make sure we get it again. What was the Passover about? Remembering the day that they came out of Egypt, remembering their bondage. It was as if what you call Black history today, but it was back then for that first trip to Egypt. So he wanted them to remember that. So it's important that they commemorate that. Get Deuteronomy chapter 5 and 15. Deuteronomy 5 and 15. Right? And let's read that at the same time. Deuteronomy 5 and 15 on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's read it. Well, y'all ain't reading, y'all mumbling. Let's read it together. 1, 2, 3. I don't want you to forget that you came out of Egypt. Now, he wanted this done throughout their generation. Because guess what? Jamie, come here, son. You're 14 years old, right? All right, I'm going to say 12. 14 years old. He has never been in bondage as to what your forefathers and your mothers were in. He don't understand the struggle. And he don't understand the sacrifices that they made. So you do that every year to remind him. He doesn't know. Now, my mother knows. But after a while, guess what's going to happen? After a while, the people that went through the struggle, they're going to be gone. 50 years from now, there will be nobody here that remember what people, there will be no personal witnesses of what happened with Martin Luther King. There will be no personal witnesses of segregation because all of them will be dead. in 50 years. Pass it on to your children so that they can appreciate it. And right now, we're getting to the point that people don't appreciate what was done because we're not passing it on. That's why the children of Israel end up going back into bondage and getting bad treatment, because they forgot who got them liberated. If they had remembered, because and not only had they forgot who got them liberated, they let the pharaohs of Egypt forget who liberated them. Go to the Exodus chapter 1. 1 and 8. They didn't continue to keep in the eyes of the government the covenant that they had made with their leaders, the covenant they had made with Joseph, and the contribution that Joseph had given to them. Look at the book of Exodus chapter 1 and 8. You got it? When you get it, say praise the Lord. Exodus the first chapter and 8 verse. Watch this. Exodus 1 and 8. Y'all with me? Y'all follow me? Now April is helping me. April is going to take some questions for me tonight. And everybody, she's going to pass them out. If y'all get them right, I'm taking everybody out to eat one day this month. Okay? I ain't telling y'all where we're going. We may go to the Sonics or the hot dog stand or something. I may take y'all over to Circle K for a two for one hot dog. All right? But it won't be McDonald's. You're right. Exodus chapter 1 and 8. Exodus 1 and 8. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, let's read it like you know what you're reading. And there arose a new king over Egypt, which what? Read that again. There arose what? How does a new king rise in Egypt that don't know Joseph, the one that actually got them liberated and got them in places? Because the children of Israel stopped talking about it. They stopped mentioning it. It was no more importance to them. What the struggles that everybody else that went through, it was no more important. It was no more talked about. It was no more spoken of. And let me tell you, they've stopped pretty much talking about all of the history in schools. That's not important. You got very little, and a lot of that is optional and stuff that you take now. So there arose a new Pharaoh that did not know Joseph. What else it said? Read. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. So listen, the fact that they no longer were talking about their struggle, the fact that they no longer was talking about the individual who had liberated them, laid ground now for this new Pharaoh to do them any kind of way, because they had forgotten to talk about Joseph. In fact, Joseph knew they would forget him if he hadn't made certain reminders to them. And they had a commitment, and I want y'all to know this. We have a commitment to some dead people. I didn't say you communicate with the dead. You have a commitment to some dead people. Let me talk about it. People can die, and you owe them certain things when they die. Some wills are written conditionally. Now, what you don't hear, and we hear this all the time, and I believe that as Martin Luther King was dying, I don't believe that he was a spiritual man as far as apostolic, but I do believe that God used him for a particular time, just like he used a mule and any other thing in the Bible. But everybody's caught up in what he said, that he had a dream. A dream is not something that he fulfilled. A dream is something that you have when you're asleep. And what folk can understand, he had a dream, but it was up to this generation to wake up and fulfill the dream. Now, that dream has become a nightmare. So if you don't get up and do something with the dream, so I want, this is important. Every single one of those people that died, that gave their lives in the civil rights struggle, you have a commitment to them. And Joseph said, I got y'all where you were, and you have a commitment to me. The children of Israel had a commitment to Joseph when he was dead. He said, now you all are going to get liberated, and when you all get liberated, even though I'm dead, you're supposed to liberate me. Look at the book of Exodus chapter 50 and 25. This is Joseph on his deathbed. This is his deathbed. 50 and 25, Joseph, who got them liberated in 50 and 25, and Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you. This is kind of like what Martin Luther King was saying. I have a dream. I ain't going to get there with you. This is Genesis 50 and 25. What I said, Exodus? All right, forgive me. That means you're listening. Now, Joseph has a dream, or he has a vision of what God is going to do. And this is what he said. Sounds just like Martin Luther King. Remember, Joseph is a dreamer, just like Martin Luther King was a dreamer. Look what it says. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones from this place. He said, God is going to deliver you. I'm seeing liberation. I'm not going to be liberated with you, but I'm seeing liberation. I see that there's a liberation coming, that you're coming out of Egypt. Kind of sound like that speech, Martin Luther King. I may not get there with you, but I'm going to come out. I see one day my children and this and that and that and that. All of these was things that he saw, but he didn't get there. Now somebody had to fulfill that. Joseph had the dream, but Moses actually fulfilled that dream. And listen what happens. Moses was committed to doing what Joseph had said. We had a Joseph that come. Joseph would be the Martin Luther King. But our problem today, this generation doesn't have a Moses that's going to come back and fulfill Joseph's dream. Martin Luther King is the Joseph. Now we need Moses. Because his was a dream. It wasn't fulfilled in his day. Look at the book of Exodus now, the 13th chapter. 13th chapter in the 3rd verse. 13 and 3, his commitment to a dead man who had a dream of them being released. Exodus 13 and 3. And Moses said unto the people, remember this day. Y'all with me? Let me go further. 13 and 19. 13 and 19. And Moses, let's go to 13, 17. Let's read that together. On the count of 3. I promise I got it right that time. 13, 17. 1, 2, 3. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh had let the people go, that God led them not through the way of the land of the Philistine, although it was near, for God said, lest peradventure the people repent when they see war, and they return to Egypt. But God led the people about through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea, and the children of Israel went up on a harness out of the land of Egypt. Verse 19. Let's read that together loud and clear. 1, 2, 3. And Moses took the bone of Joseph with him, for he had straitly sworn the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and ye shall carry up my bones away hence with you. So Moses died. Joseph died with a dream. But Moses had to come and commit that dream to him. So Martin Luther King died with a dream, but we need Moses now to fulfill that dream. And that's a commitment to somebody that's dead. In this generation, almost 50 years later, there is no Moseses to bring us to the fulfillment of the dream that a man had 50 years ago. We're still dreaming. So Moses has a responsibility. But you can't forget. That's important. When Jesus died, Jesus said, I want you to remember any liberation and anybody that's liberated. It's important that you remember your liberator and you have some type of ceremony to remember your liberation. Even when Jesus died, he said, I want you to get a day as often as you do it, and I want you to get a meal and you eat it, and this do in remembrance of me. I need you to remember what I did so that you will be committed to continue the legacy that I left by remembering what I did. I died to save others, and I want you to die daily to save others. And I want you to go through all of those same patterns that I went through to refresh yourself of what I've done, that you'll never forget it. And we live in a generation that has forgotten the sacrifices that was made for you to go to school, have forgotten the sacrifices that was made for you to drive certain places and eat certain places and live. They forgot it. So it's my job now to make sure that you don't forget that. Folk get tired of hearing it. Some of you know absolutely nothing about black history, and you're grown. 15, 16. All you do know is about Martin Luther King got shot and he had a dream, and that's all. You don't know anything else about these other people who were civil rights leaders who died and other folk who made the sacrifice, and that's why you can't appreciate. And I was thinking the other day, because I'm a historian by nature, and I study the history that's given to us to make sure that's correct, because a lot of that's lies. So I'm just talking about stuff, and while I'm talking, people just looking at me. They in their 50s and 60s, and they're looking like they lost. I can tell they lost. You know how people just shake their head and they know. I said, you remember right over there? Okay. All right. 1 Corinthians chapter 11 and 24. And when he had given thanks, he brake it and said, take, eat. This is my body which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me. After the same manner also he took the cup when he had supped, saying, this cup is the New Testament in my blood. This do in remembrance, this do as often as you do in remembrance of me. So anytime somebody has given their life, anytime somebody has made sacrifice for you, it's important for you to remember so that you can have your obligation. Now, Minister Tylex, I want to go over this. Let's see first what I want you to do. Let me come up a little closer, see where we are. Because these are things that I want to teach you tonight. This is the, not that one. Let's go down a little further. Let me look at them. Okay, now, stop. Don't, we're not going to play it yet. I got a few questions because I'm remembering sacrifices that people made. Who is James Meredith? James Meredith. Anybody know who James Meredith is? Let me see your hand if you know who James Meredith is. Anybody know who James Meredith? Ever heard of him? Never heard of him? Come tell me who he is. I want to know.
He was a civil rights leader in the 60s.
Okay, and what happened? Anybody else know who he is? He is correct. Anybody else know who he is? Anybody know who he was? He was one of the, you know? Okay, let me hear you.
I don't know a lot about him, but I know that he led a march, and I believe it was Miss.
Had my book. He's good. He's right. I educated him.
He was leading a march, and he ended up getting shot, I think, a couple of times.
What else is important about him to know? Let's get something else important about him to know. He was the first black student in Ole Miss. First black student in Ole Miss. I actually had the privilege of conversating with him on the phone, talking with him. He's a legend in civil rights. Had an opportunity to talk with him, Joe Chandler and I. Because see, now out of all these people in here, that's why some of y'all don't know, out of all these folk in here, you never heard of them. Never heard of them. I'm going to educate you tonight so you'll know. School teachers, professional people, little people, young people, because I'm giving you because this is what you need to know. Everybody needs to know it. All right, let's cut the lights off, honey. Cut them off. All right. I want to go to another first, Minister Tylex. I want to go to the one that deals with Ole Miss. All right, this is the first one I want to look. He's going to make it big. We got some sound coming out of it. Okay. Ronnie, let's make this happen for Minister Tylex. Try this here, please. All right, let me explain to you what happened. Put it on stop. Schools were not integrated. They were desegregated. This young man decided he wanted to go to a school. It was all white at the particular time. This is when things were being desegregated. So you watch a little bit of what happened. All right.
entitled to defy a court of law.
Now, all that happened, go back to the other one, all that happened because all that commotion that you're seeing there was this young man wanting to go to school, and when we went to go to school, they had to actually call the National Guard down because those back in those days that were full of racism and prejudice didn't want him to go to the school. So that was a sacrifice. That's bold to put your life on the line to go to a school just to prove the fact that I can go to school any way I want to, and to put his life on the line for that. Now, after that, he decided he wanted to have a march throughout Mississippi. So he decided to have that march throughout Mississippi, him and a couple of more people, to march through those racist areas. This is the march, and I want you to see what happened in the middle of the march. Cut the light off, Ronnie. Cut it off. Cut the chandelier off, too. All right? You got it, minister? Is the volume on? You don't see him get shot while he's marching. Shot while the television cameras are rolling, the news cameras are rolling. Now this, yeah, that's the man that shot him. No handcuffs. Pipe in his mouth. All right. It's one of the suspects there that they call. That's what he's shot with. And he lived after that march, and they continued, Martin Luther King and a few other folk went and continued that march throughout Mississippi, all the way through Mississippi to make sure that that march was finished. So that's somebody you didn't read about that was shot because they wanted to march through these towns to prove that they didn't have no fear and weren't afraid, and they were willing to sacrifice their lives so that you can enjoy the privilege that you have now. Don't forget it. It's more than Martin Luther King. Don't forget it. You need to know that. That's why the Bible says that. Remember what liberated you. So while you're sitting down today, eating at your nice restaurants, going to these nice schools, while you got these nice jobs, these are the people that paved the way, and that's how the way was paved. Don't forget it. Amen. Y'all with me? I got a few more, because this is stuff that I think our young people are ignorant to. This is stuff that many of us are ignorant to. And then it's important because when we have people that have not been through that struggle and they see us talking about these things, a lot of them, they're not, first of all, if black people don't hear it and they don't know it, whites, Hispanics, and other people, they don't get it either because you don't even know it yourself and you wasn't interested in it. And if you ain't been through the struggle, you definitely don't have the interest. So people can understand the importance of what you talk about and the importance of what you went through. Let me go through this. I got another one I want to show you. Type in the yes, the city. Now, stop it right there. Anybody ever heard of the Greensboro Four? Anybody? Sister Cowart, put your hand down. She asked me some questions about it. Anybody ever heard of the Greensboro Four? Who knows about that? All right, you answered one, Jamie. Who else? Who knows about the Greensboro Four? Don't put it up now. I don't want y'all putting up nothing reading it. You know about them? All right, you doing the camera ain't gonna get you. Who know about the Greensboro Four? Not you either. Okay, so you see all of this that's here. Nobody knew about James Meredith. All right. Nobody knew about that march. Nobody knew about the Ole Miss school, or even remember names or such as that. So anybody know about the Greensboro Four? Okay. Tell me about the Greensboro Four. Greensboro Four. All right. You want to tell me about it, Sister April? All right. Here you are.
They were basically a group of African-American students, college students, who held a sit-in in protest for equality and equal rights.
So at that particular time there, and I want y'all to get the setting, at that particular time there, it was against the law for black people to sit in the same restaurant and eat with white people. Now you need to get something in your mind. At that particular time, not only were these people protesting, but what they were doing was to define the laws that were already in existence as written laws. So not only did they look like they were troublemakers, but they also looked like people that was doing something illegal because they were going against what the laws was at that particular time. It was against the law. Rosa Parks, it was against the law to ride in the front of the bus. It was against the law to sit in restaurants. So not only were they humiliated by the whites, but they're humiliated by their own blacks because they understood that whatever the law was doing at that particular time was wrong. Just like what they're doing today and killing our children is wrong. And so when they stood up as school teachers and other people standing up against that, because it's written in the United States of the American laws and because they permit it, doesn't mean it's right. And it's not right for them killing our young people today, just like it was not right for them to tell you you couldn't sit in that restaurant. But somebody had to go against the written law that was wrong at that particular time. So these 4 college students, they did something amazing. Look what they did.
This new movement would explode on May 28, 1963, when John Salter and Megan Edwards took the Jackson boycott to the next level. And all 14 people would participate in what would become one of the most famous and violent sit-ins of the civil rights movement.
Occurred a period of time from the reporter, the cameraman, and the son of one of the reporters that this was the most terrifying, frightening event they covered in the civil rights movement. Now, yes, they weren't in Birmingham, Montgomery with the freedom riders, but they got around. This to them was the worst.
Everyone believed that the students would be immediately arrested and carted off to jail. And so they were not as a cause much of work because they really had their hopes pinned on the integrated group of demonstrators. When 3 individuals from the U.S. Memphis movement and Ian Moody sat down at the white counter. Now, Joan, interestingly, was not supposed to be part of this demonstration. She was what was called a floater, and she was supposed to spot a demonstration, the protest going on down the street.
But the picket line was arrested more or less immediately. So last came along. So Lois and I phoned in a report on that. And then met at his office to get the lawyers involved on it.
voluntarily walked in the school. And it was right at that moment that a thug, a former police officer, had come in, racist, virulent segregations, came in and pulled Memphis Norman, the one black male, off the stool, knocked him onto the floor, and began kicking him mercilessly. Memphis
As a police officer.
the ball and was trying to protect himself in the way that he'd been taught. Meanwhile, I was back at the NAACP offices in the Masonic Temple when a quick, hurried call came.
Medgar and John, others in the office, had to make the decision, do we call it off and try to rescue the last two people who were there? And then if we didn't call it off, how could we leave just two people at that counter? Would we have volunteers to go in?
So I set out to head for the Woolworth store. Medgar wanted to come, and I persuaded him not to. Because I said, you're a marked man. And the way this thing is developing, you could get killed. John was then stuck in a situation wondering what's going to happen next. Ann Moody had been pulled up with her stool and thrown against some of the counters. Pearlina Lewis was also pulled from the stool and was down on her knees right by the counter when the police officer came on the scene. Both of them rushed back to the counter, and so that the demonstration would continue. Joan sees all this and realizes, first of all, she is beginning to communicate with the demonstrators. She sees a man with a knife walk by Ann Moody, and she calls out, Annie, he's got a knife. And all of a sudden she's identified with the people at the counter. Who's this white girl talking to those black girls, So all of a sudden she realizes that she's in danger.
But then I sat down. That's when I became a problem.
She walked through that mob at the Woolworth store. And they realized, of course, immediately where she stood. She joins Pearlina and Annie at the counter. The first white to join the demonstration. And at this, the crowd is just incensed. They become like hornets. They start screaming at her. I went immediately to the lunch counter to sit with Joan and Annie Moody. When Salter joined, the crowd turned violent. He was knocked in the back of his head with brass knuckles.
And these are white people that went through because they were standing with blacks.
On the back of Salter's neck. There were several cigarettes, and you can still see it to this day. If you look on the back of his neck, he has scars in the shape of a cigarette. They threw pepper and water mixture into his eyes. Things were just going out of control. And at that point, Joan had said that she believed that they were not going to make it out alive. None of them were going to make it out alive.
So you can stop there. So it's very important that y'all don't just know about Martin Luther King getting shot because he made a speech, and that y'all understand, one, why I do what I do, because that's why you're here where you are today. Why we stand up, why we protest, why we fight, because that's our right. That's what got you to see that what you are, that's what got you where you are now. That's why you're eating where you are. People like this stood up for something that was law. It was law, but the law was wrong. And somebody had to stand up and challenge a wrong law. And eventually those laws that were wrong were changed, but they didn't just get changed because somebody decided to change them. They didn't get changed because somebody woke up this morning and say, we're wrong, let's change it. It got changed because somebody put their life on the line. And these are the people that you need to hear their stories and know what have happened, because you all are enjoying some privileges that you just didn't get them. They wasn't earned, they wasn't handed down. They were through somebody's blood. That's why you must get your education, because somebody paid for you to be able to go to school, not dollars, blood. Amen. Once you realize what people sacrifice and what people put in for you to have that freedom, for you to have that right, then you start treating that freedom a little differently. You start respecting that freedom. Every time you get up and get ready to go to a restaurant, you respect the fact that these people laid the way for you to be able to do it. Every time you get on a bus and get ready to ride, and not just, see, the civil rights movement, it has just as many whites that got involved and put their life on the risk. Now watch, I talked about this morning. These are white people who don't have that problem in America. They were free to go wherever they wanted to go. They're free to go eat wherever they wanted to eat. But they decided, listen, this is not right what they're doing to these black folk. And if it's going to cause us, I'll take the burn in my neck. If it's going to cause us, I'll take it. Now, and at the same time, I'm going to give you a letter I want to read a little later from Martin Luther King. At the same time, white people who are free are joining in with the march to help those who are bound. Black preachers are writing letters against Martin Luther King and fighting him. I want to give you that. I want to read it. It was so. It's very important that you understand the mentality that we have that has to be broken. How many of y'all? I take y'all to the house every year. Civil rights I'm passionate about. Who knows about Medgar Evers? We went to his house. Anybody know about? Yeah, you from Mississippi? You better know. Know about Medgar Evers? Anybody know about Medgar Evers? You know about him? Who was he?
He was part of the NAACP, right? And he was shot and killed in front of his own home.
Let's talk about him. Before we go to him, let's get to the Freedom Riders. Freedom Riders. Let's talk about them. Then I want to go over a few things about slavery. Anybody know who the Buffalo Soldiers are? Anybody heard of the Buffalo Soldiers? Huh? You heard of them? You know who they are? All right. No, they ain't killed buffalo. I get their name, but they're Buffalo Soldiers. All right, let's look at the Freedom Riders. All right, this is one.
Just got an alert from Monster for a great job. Might be out of here soon. We know when that happened. African Americans, since the end of slavery, have been treated in much of the country as a despised minority. They are forced to eat and use bathrooms separately from whites. James Farmer is the founder of the Congress of Racial Equality, known as CORE.
In order to understand how any Negro feels under segregation, you have to realize that from the time of infancy, he has it pounded into him that he is not as good as other people. There are things he cannot do. Don't do this, you can't do this, you can't do the other.
James Farmer bore one candidate to understand that segregation stains America's image around the world. CORE wants to test the Supreme Court ruling, long ignored in the South, that bans segregation in interstate travel. The plan is for black and white volunteers to ride together on buses. Journeys that CORE calls freedom rides.
White and blacks riding together.
Riders commit themselves to nonviolence.
I want you to think it over very carefully, and if you
Believing that challenging segregation peacefully force the authorities to act.
we would be very happy to have you embark upon this dangerous, worthwhile, significant mission.
CORE prepares the riders for the racial hatred they can expect.
Hey, you, nigger. You hear what that man said? You hear what that man said? You get back there, get back. Get back.
They're practicing for what they're going to actually go through.
On May 4th, 1961, James Farmer leads 13 people, black and white, onto buses in Washington, D.C., bound for New Orleans. 10 days later, the bus enters Alabama, home to the largest KKK organization in America. Evanston, the Klan surrounds the bus, slashing its tires. Photographer Joe Postolione captures these images. The crippled Greyhound tries to escape, but a few miles out of town, the Klan surrounds and firebombs it. The rider is still inside. The Freedom Riders do escape the bus, only to be beaten by the Klan. Joe's photos bring the Freedom Rides to international attention.
So that's another thing that most of y'all didn't hear about. People put their life on the line, sacrifice their lives so that you can join that freedom. Now that's black and white. All of this went on, and most of y'all don't know anything about it. That's why Moses say, remember, remember, so that you can understand and appreciate your freedom differently. Why they don't go over this in school no more? Why you don't find out this out in school no more? Don't talk about this in school no more. And I figure since they're not talking about it in school, we need to talk about it in church. Because you need to remember, you need to know. That will give our children a better appreciation of their liberties, a better appreciation of what they do, and then you'll have a better understanding of what I'm doing. Nothing different than what has brought you to the place that you are now. I want to talk about the 4 civil rights. There they are. All right. These 4, there's a video, right? Okay. All right. Minister Tyler's going to, it was 3 of them. Play number, that one there, right there. That the one down. That's Mary. Oh, that was it, one right there. Yeah, that one there. Okay, now listen to this.
In the summer of 1964, Andy Goodman got training in how to register African Americans to vote as part of the growing civil rights movement in America.
People should be expected to get beaten. They should expect to spend in jail, and it may go beyond the simple when they're in jail, that they should expect possibly somebody to get killed.
Then he traveled to Mississippi and wrote this postcard to say that he had arrived safely. The people in this city are wonderful, they wrote, and our reception was very good. The postmark, June 21st, 1964. That was the same day Goodman and fellow civil rights workers James Chaney and Mickey Schwerner went missing.
They were stopped by the police, accused of speeding. They were put in jail, and they were not allowed to make a phone call. And they were released at night. They got back in the car, and the Ku Klux Klan named them.
For the latest on the search for the 3 missing boys,
The men's disappearance made national headlines. President Lyndon Johnson ordered federal agents to Mississippi.
I asked Hoover last 2 weeks ago. That's so the attorney general to fill up Mississippi with FBI men and infiltrate everything he could. What do they think happened? Think they got killed?
This morning they had absolutely no trace. There's no sign of the automobile. They have found nobody who's seen the car or the 3 people. So as far as they're concerned, they just disappeared from the face of the earth.
It wasn't until August 4th, 1964, that their bodies were found.
Thousands of law enforcement agents. For 44 days, we're looking for my brother's body and James and Mickey. They dredged out of the swamps 9 black bodies who no one had even heard of. There's multiple levels of tragedy in this story. One of them that is most poignant for me, besides losing my brother, was that it took 2 white kids to legitimize the tragedy of being murdered if you wanted to vote.
And it took decades to achieve any kind of justice for the murders of Andy Goodman, James Chaney, and Mickey Schwerner. 18 men were arrested in 1967. Half a dozen were convicted, but only of civil rights violations. None served more than 6 years. No one was convicted of murder. Jerry Mitchell, an investigative reporter in Jackson, Mississippi, began looking at the case again in the late 80s.
Jerry Mitchell is a unique, wonderful hero. He said, this is unfair. Just like what Andy said. He found evidence and wrote about it so much that he just embarrassed the powers that be to get on it.
Thanks to Mitchell's reporting, the state reopened the case, and in 2005, Ku Klux Klan preacher Ray Edgar Killen went to trial for the killings. Killen was found guilty of manslaughter. Now 89, he is serving 60 years in prison. It was a long overdue measure of justice for the victims' families, including Annie Goodman's mother, Carolyn Goodman, herself a prominent social activist, who called for justice but opposed the death penalty.
She and my father decided the issue is to let America know that this is not about hatred. This is not about revenge. My mother was against capital punishment. She was more interested in letting people know this was her son that was murdered. He didn't do anything bad. He was living the American dream.
Now, now this is what I want to explain to you, and I want you to get this, and then I'm going to play one more, and then I'm going to go back to the scriptures. This is what I'm explaining to you, is that in 1964 and 65, 66, when all of these civil rights laws were passed, you got the same people as policemen. You got the same people in government. So the climate doesn't change. I talked about that on last week. But what people were doing coming against that system was actually, cut the light on, Ronnie, was actually legal. It was legal to do it. It was legal to operate in that fashion. It was perfectly fine. So today, when we sit back, and it's kind of adjusted itself, so when we sit back and we see young folk that are killed and murdered, like this young man that was murdered in Lakeland, and we see different other things that you see on television, you see different other things that you see in the news that are coming on, and we see those and we watch them. And sometimes we say, so somebody said this when they saw the young man that was shot. Well, if it was a stolen car, and that's not factual, but if it's a stolen car, he should have shot. He shouldn't have had a record. He's a felon. You understand? You're walking in the same mindset that those people was walking in that says, oh, they should beat them up if they're sitting up there at the lunch counter. They know it's against the law to eat at the lunch counter. The same mindset. So the same thought pattern. So what we're seeing happening today is, and young people, you must know, because what's happening, if you get someplace and don't know how you got there, you don't know how to get there again. If you got where you were because of situations like this, then you don't know how to get to the next place because you don't know how to do what they did to get you here. That's what got you here. And it cost somebody their life. It cost somebody their life for you to enjoy the privileges that you have now. And what has happened is this generation is a relaxed generation that's satisfied with a piece of freedom. They're satisfied with the peace. Most of our older folk who are in their 50s and 60s and 70s, they feel like things have changed. For Mother Cowart, it's changed. But it ain't changed. There's been no major changes since then. There's no change in racial profiling. There's no change in how those changes aren't really there. And so I understand that generation being lax because they feel like something has happened. But this generation that we're living in now, there has been no major changes that you can really say that you have seen that make things, you'll still stop because you're black. You're still profiled. And so it's your generation that's got to get up off yourself and stand up and say, hey, listen, we are the generation that's going to fulfill the legacy of our fathers and stand up, because I remember what they did. But guess what? You can't remember something that you ain't never been taught. So this is why I'm taking the time to teach you now, because you can't remember this. Because some of y'all, this is the first time even hearing it. And I'm talking about grown folk that's been to school and everything else. First time hearing it, first time going into this. I've got two more that I want to give you. I want to give you Mega Everest, and then I'm each Sunday night in February, I'm going to go over a civil rights hero, what you call a civil rights hero, and someone that was because you hear the highlights of the white civil rights leaders, but you don't hear many of the white Civil War, black Civil War heroes. I'm going to go over my favorite tonight, amen, so that you can hear it. All right, go quickly to Mega Everest, all right, and then I'm going to go over Small, all right. And I had the privilege of meeting Mega X's brother, Charles Evers. I was on his radio station for quite a while, and he told me some personal things about his brother. I didn't know that his father was a Baptist and his mother was Church of God in Christ. And he told me, he said that when they said that one woman thing, he couldn't stick with the Church of God in Christ. He's about 90, probably about 94, 90, 95, 96. Very nice gentleman. I spoke with him and met him. I think he has a son who works in law enforcement in Orlando. But I had a chance to meet him and sit down and tell us a little bit about his brother, and I actually went to his brother's house. I want you to hear this, and this story that Minister Tylex is going to give you. Remember these names.
Medgar Evers was born in Mississippi, July 2nd, 1925. There were few opportunities afforded him as a black man. When World War II broke out in Europe, Evers joined the army, fighting alongside white soldiers from around the world.
It was in Europe as a young man he came to realize how restrictive Jim Crow segregation was in the South and his home state of Mississippi.
Upon returning home from the war, Evers took advantage of the GI Bill to attend Alcorn College in Mississippi. While majoring in business administration, Evers took time out of his studies to woo fellow undergrad Merle Beasley. After a year-long courtship, the pair married and started a family in Mississippi that would eventually include 3 children. Inspired by the monumental Brown versus Board of Education decision, Evers quit his stable job as an insurance salesman to put his talents to work for the civil rights movement. Although his efforts to integrate the University of Mississippi Law School failed when they did not admit him, the NAACP took notice of the ambitious Evers and appointed him their first field secretary.
This is a man who, for 8 or 9 years, organized a state where civil rights workers would disappear. To be a member of the NAACP and to be the front person of that organization in the state was a remarkably courageous act.
Evers quickly settled into a job of shaking up the establishment. Focusing on crimes against blacks, he set up boycotts against white-owned businesses that practiced discrimination and helped investigate acts of violence, such as the Emmett Till lynching, where a 14-year-old black boy was lynched for just talking to a white woman. Evers' position as a symbol of the civil rights movement solidified, with his attempts to get fellow African-American James Meredith admitted to the previously all-white University of Mississippi. Although Meredith was admitted to the school, race riots broke out, leading to the death of 2 white people. Angry white supremacists sent death threats to Evers, hoping that fear and intimidation would curb his efforts to integrate the South, but Evers had fought too hard to stop now. The tides were changing, and Evers was proud to be leading the cause. However, Medgar's efforts came to a violent conclusion. On June 12, 1963, as Evers was returning home from an NAACP meeting, KKK member Byron De La Beckwith shot Evers in his driveway as he was getting out of his car. Evers was killed instantly. Arrested for the crime, Byron De La Beckwith was tried twice by all-white juries in 1964. Both trials ended with hung juries. In 1994, new evidence from one of Beckwith's prison guards brought him back to the courts for a 3rd and final time. The guard claimed Beckwith bragged about shooting Evers. Convicted after only 6 hours by a mixed-race jury, Beckwith got life in prison. Although only living a short 38 years, Evers' legacy has lived on through the struggle for equal rights. Outrage over his death increased the power of the movement in Washington, eventually leading to the creation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. His wife Merle has worked writing books and setting up memorials so that blacks and whites alike will remember his poignant motto, "Violence is not the way."
So I want you to read this. Then I'm going to talk about this civil rights hero. Now you keep hearing whites and blacks, whites and blacks, whites and blacks were inspired to come and be a part of this. Remember. You should remember what God did. Remember how God did it. Remember what happened so that you will always go back and appreciate. You can't appreciate what you don't know. When a young lady has a baby, she appreciates her mother a little more because she know what her mother went through to have that baby. When you raise children, you appreciate it a little more because you know what happened. So when you understand, now I want to go over this. Read this letter from the Birmingham jail. I'm going to ask that Sister Cowart. I hope you got your glasses. If not, you have to borrow Sister Paula's. And then you ought to be able to read back in the back of the church. All right. All right. All right. Make it a little bigger. Please listen to this. All right. Can we make it a little clearer? All right. Sister Cowart, you gonna try? What's that? Are those tiara glasses? Let's see if they work. Okay. Now listen to this.
Letter from Birmingham Jail by Martin Luther King Jr. From the Birmingham Jail, where he was in prison as a participant in nonviolent demonstration against segregation, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. wrote in a long hand the letter which follows. It was his response to a public statement of concern and caution issued by 8 white religious leaders of the South. Dr. King, who was born in 1929, did his undergraduate work at Morehouse College, attended the Integrated Craze Theological Seminar in Chester, Pennsylvania, one of the black pupils among 100 students, and the president of his class, and won a fellowship to Boston University for his PhD.
Now, I want you to understand the nature of this letter first. This letter is written to him by preachers who are condemning his activity as far as marching and all of this for civil rights. So this is them criticizing him, and this is his response. Make it a little bit smaller so she get those words on the side. All right? All right. Okay, go ahead. Lord, open our eyes that she may see. Anybody can give me some clay and...
While confined here in the Birmingham City Jail, I came across your recent statement calling our present activities unwise and untimely. Seldom, if ever, do I pause to answer criticism of my work and ideas. If I sought to answer all the criticism that crossed my desk, my secretaries would be engaged in little else in the course of the day, and I will have no time for constructive work.
Listen at it good.
But since I feel that you are men of genuine goodwill and your criticisms are sincerely set forth, I would like to answer your statement in what I hope will be patient and reasonable terms. I think I should give the reason for my being in Birmingham, since you have been influenced by the argument of outsiders coming in.
That's what they were told when I got ready to march in Lakeland, that's what the NAACP got on and said, don't be influenced by outsiders coming in or agitated. Same conversation, same system, it ain't changed yet. It's the same thing. These are preachers, 8 preachers who are voicing their concerns about Martin Luther King marching, and they've got the same conversation today, outsiders coming in. All right, read.
I have the honor of serving as president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, an organization operating in every southern state with headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia. We have some 85 affiliate organizations all across the South, one being the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights. Whenever necessary and possible, we share staff, educational, and financial resources with our affiliates. Several months ago, our local affiliates here in Birmingham invited us to be on call to engage in a nonviolence direct action program if such were deemed necessary. We really consented, and when the hour came, we lived up to our promises. So I am here along with several members of my staff because we were invited here. I am here because I have basic organization ties here. Beyond this, I am in Birmingham because of injustice is here. Just as the 8th century prophets left their little villages and carried there, thus said the Lord, far beyond the boundaries of their hometowns, and just as the Apostle Paul left his little village of Tarshish and carried the gospel of Jesus Christ to practically every hamlet and city of the Greco-Roman world, I too am compelled to carry the gospel of freedom beyond my particular hometown. Like Paul, I must constantly respond to the Macedonian call for aid. Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happened in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
This is the response that he had to give to preachers like these black, sorry Negroes that fight me. And I'm not afraid to respond the same way. It was happening then and it's happening now. Somebody got to stand up. Somebody got to say something. And you don't sit back in your little corner. Now see, this is a part of the fight that Martin Luther King had that y'all didn't see from the preachers, from the ministers. This is the same thing today. This is who they're using today to fight injustices. So all you know about the dream, but you don't know about the fight behind the dream. Somebody got to be bold enough to get out of your corner and do something and put yourself on the line. All right? Now this is response to preachers. The greatest, not all, but one of the greatest problems to the black community is its own preachers. Because they're paid, if not money, some are not even paid. Some are just volunteers so they didn't say they have a relationship with somebody. They're hurting their own community just to say, I'm connected. I'm tied in. Just to say they know me. Or just to say I can pick up the phone and call them whenever I want to call them. So this is the fight. All right, read.
We are caught in an inescapable network of brutality tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside, agitator ideas. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider. You deplore the demonstrations that are presently taking place in Birmingham, but I am sorry that your statement did not express a similar concern for the conditions that brought the demonstrations into being. I am sure that each of you will want to go beyond the superficial social analyst who looks merely at efforts and does not grapple with underlying causes. I would not hesitate to say that it is unfortunate that so-called demonstrations are taking place in Birmingham at this time. But I would say in more empathy terms that it is even more unfortunate that the white power structure of this city left the Negro community with no other alternative. In any nonviolence campaign, there are 4 basic steps. Collection of the facts to determine whether injustice or alive, negotiation, self-purification, and direct action. We have gone through all of these steps in Birmingham. There can be no gainsaying of the fact that racial injustice engulfs this community. Birmingham is probably the most thoroughly segregated city in the United States. Its ugly record of police brutality is known in every section of this country. Its unjust treatment of Negroes in the courts is a notorious reality. There have been more unsolved bombings of Negro homes and churches in Birmingham than in any other city in this nation. These are the hard, brutal, and unbelievable facts. On the basis of them, Negro leaders sought to negotiate with the city fathers, but the political leaders consistently refused to engage in good faith negotiation. Then came the opportunity last September to talk with some of the leaders of the economic community. In these negotiating sessions, certain promises were made by the merchants, such as the promise to remove the humiliating racial signs from the stores. On the basics of these promises, Reverend Shuttlesworth and the leaders of the Alabama Christian Movement for Human Rights agreed to call a moratorium on any type of demonstration. As the weeks and months unfolded, we realized that we were the victims of a broken promise. The signs remain, and in so many experiences of the past, we are confronted with blessed hopes and the dark shadow of a deep disappointment settled upon us. So we had no alternative except that of preparing for direct action, whereby we would present our very bodies as means of laying our case before the conscience of the local and national community. We are not unmindful of the difficulties involved, so we decided to go through a process of self-purification. We started having workshops on nonviolence and repeatedly asked ourselves the questions: are you able to accept blows without retaliating? And are you able to endure the ordeals of jail? We decided to set our direct action program around the Easter season, realizing that with exception of Christmas, this was the largest shopping period of the year. Knowing that a strong economic withdrawal program would be the byproduct of direct action, we felt that this was the best time to bring pressure on the merchants for the needed changes. Then it occurred to us that the March election was ahead, and so we speedily decided to postpone action until after Election Day. When we discovered that Mr. Conner was in the runoff, we decided again to postpone action so that the demonstration could not be used to cloud the issues. At this time, we agreed to begin our nonviolence witness the day after the runoff. This reveals that we did not move irresponsibly into direct action. We too wanted to see Mr. Comer defeated, So we went through postponement and after postponement to aid in this community need. After this, we felt that direct action could be delayed no longer. You may well ask, why direct action? Why sit-ins, marches, and so forth? Isn't negotiation a better path?
I see these are the questions that he's facing from the ministers and the people in the community, asking them these questions. All right, read.
You are exactly right in your call for negotiation. Indeed, this is the purpose of direct action. Nonviolence, direct action seeks to create such a crisis and so to dramatize the issue that it can no longer be ignored. I just referred to the creation of tension as a part of the work, of the earnestly work and preach against violent tension. But there is a type of constructive, nonviolent tension that is necessary for growth. Just as Socrates felt that it was necessary to create a tension in the mind so that individuals could rise from the bondage of myths and have truths to the unfettered realm of creativity analysis and objective appraisal, we must see the need of having nonviolence gadflies to create the kind of tension in society that will help men to rise from the dark depths of prejudice and racism to the majestic heights of understanding and brotherhood. So the purpose of direct action is to create a situation so crisis packed be that it will inevitably open the door to negotiation. We therefore concur with you in your call for negotiation. Too long has our beloved Southland been bogged down in the tragic attempt to live in monologues rather than dialogue. One of the basic points in your statement is that our acts are untimely. Some have asked, why didn't you?
Now he's addressing things that he's been talked to. One of the basic points in your statement is that our acts are untimely. All right, go ahead.
Why didn't you give the new administration time to act? The only answer that I can give you to this inquiry is that the new administration must be prodded about as much as the outgoing one before it acts. We will be sadly mistaken if we feel that the election of Mr. Boutwell will bring the millennium to Birmingham. While Mr. Boutwell is much more articulate and gentle than Mr. Connor, then they are both segregatists, dedicated to the task of maintaining the status quo. The hope I see in Mr. Boutwell is that he will be reasonable enough to see the futility of massive resistance to desegregation, but he will not see this without pressure from the devout of civil rights. My friends, I must say to you that we have not made a single gain in civil rights without determined legal and nonviolence pressure. History is the long and tragic story of the fact that privileged groups seldom give up their privileges. Voluntarily. Individuals may see the moral light and voluntarily give up their unjust posture. But as Ringhold Butte has reminded us, groups are more immoral than individuals. We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. I must be demanded by the oppressed. Frankly, I have never yet engaged in a direct action movement that was well timed according to the timeable of those who have not suffered unduly for the disease of segregation. For years now, I have heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with a piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. It has been a tranquilizing thalidomide, relieving the emotional stress for a moment, only to give birth to an ill-formed infant of frustration. We must come to see with the distinguished jurists of yesterday that justice too long delayed is justice denied. We have waited for more than 340 years for our God-given and constitutional rights. The nation of Asia and Africa are moving with jet-like speed toward the goal of political independence, and we will creep at horse and buggy pace toward the gaining of a cup of coffee at a lunch counter. I guess it is easy for those who have never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say wait, but when you have been vicious, mobs, lynch your mothers and fathers at will and drown your sisters and brothers at whim, when you have seen hate-filled policemen curse, kick, brutalize, and even kill your black brothers and sisters with impunity, when you see the vast majority of your 20 million Negro brothers smothering in an air-like cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society, where you suddenly find your tongue twisted and your speech stammering as you seek to explain in your 6-year-old daughter why she cannot go to public amusement parks that has just been advertised on television, and see tears welling up in her little eyes when she is told that Funtown is closed to colored children, and see the depressing clouds of inferiority begin to form in her little mental sky, and see her begin to distort her little personality by unconsciously developing a bitterness toward white people, when you have to concoct an answer for a 5-year-old son asking an agonizing pathos, Daddy, why do white people treat colored people so mean? When you take a cross-country drive and find it necessary to sleep night after night in the uncomfortable corners of your automobile because no motel will accept you when you are humiliated day in and day out by nagging signs. Reading white and colored when your first name becomes nigger and your middle name become boy. However old you are and your last name becomes John, and when your wife and mother are never given the respected title Mrs., when you are harried by day and hunted by night by the fact that you are a Negro, leaving constantly at tiptoe stance, never knowing what to expect next, and pledge with inner fears and outer resentments, when you are forever fighting a degenerating sense of a nobodiness, then you will understand why we find it difficult to wait. There comes a time when the cup of endurance runs over and men are no longer willing to be plunged into a bias of injustice where they experience the bleakness of corroding despair. I hope, sirs, you can understand our legitimate and unavoidable impatience.
Amen. I want to stop here. Don't turn it on. I want you to understand that his response to those that are saying, wait, it ain't the time. Preachers and ministers. So this move to move forward for freedom where you are would have been blocked if Martin Luther King had responded to the ministers the way they wanted to be responded to. So everybody don't see what you see. Everybody don't have the vision for what you see, but somebody got to take a stand. Amen? All right, give me the rest of that. Where are you at? A little more. That's it?
That's a new page.
Where we at?
Minister Tyler says it's a whole new page.
All right, get it.
You express a great deal of anxiety over our willingness to break laws.
You need this.
This is certainly.
You need it. And I don't care how tired you are, you need it. That's why some of you all are in the shape you're in. You don't know where you are. This is just as important as that stuff you're getting in Polk. That's where you came from. And don't disrespect those who went before you by not having enough time and patience to hear people that have given their life for you for this. This is why it's so important. And value information. I'm talking about you older saints as well. I'm surprised that out of this whole congregation, very few hands knew who some of these people were. It's very important that you get this. Very important. Because all this is going to come back and play again. You watch it. You see where we're going now. We're sliding backwards. All right, Sister Cowart, go ahead and read.
This is certainly a legitimate concern since we so diligently urge people to obey the Supreme Court's decision of 1954 outlawing segregation in the public schools. It is rather strange and paradoxically to find us consciously breaking laws. One may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all? Now, what is the difference between the two? How does one determine when a law is just or unjust? A just law is a man-made code that squares with the mortal law or the law of God. An unjust law is a code that is out of harmony with the moral law. To put it in the terms of St. Thomas Aquinas, an unjust law is a human law that is not rooted in eternal and natural law. Any law that uplifts human personality is just. Any law that degrades human personality is unjust. All segregation statutes are unjust because segregation distorts the soul and damages the personality. It gives the segregation a false sense sorry, I can't see.
Superiority. False sense of superiority.
Okay. And this is, hold on, my eyes running together. Okay, okay. Where I'm at? Right here. And the segregated false sense of inferiority. To use the words of Martin Buber, the great Jewish philosopher, segregation substitutes an I-it relationship for the I-thou relationship and ends up relegating persons to the status of things. So segregation is not the only political, economical, and sociology unsound, but it is more wrongful and sinful. Paul Tillich, he said that sin is separation. Isn't segregation an existential expression of man's tragic separation, an expression of his awful estrangement, his terrible sinfulness? So I can urge men to obey the 1954 decision of the Supreme Court, but because it is normally right.
So what he's battling with is the preachers are telling him, well, it's the law. It's written in the law. This is the way you should respond. And he's telling them a written law by man that violates the law of God is no good. Although it was a law of man to segregate, it was not the law of God. Two type of people that you're going to have. People that sit at a table and pay for the food, and people that sit at the table and eat the food. The man that sit at the table and eat the food treats the food different than the man that sit at the table and pay for the food. The one that sit on the table and eat the food, he wastes it. The one that sit at the table and eat the food, he leave left over. The one that pay for the food, even if he got something, he going to take him a doggy bag and take up some of it home because he remember the price that he paid it. We got two type of people in America today, two type of black people. Turn your light on. You got the type that paid for the freedom and the ones that's enjoying the freedom. This is the group that's enjoying the freedom. And because you're enjoying the freedom, there are things that you leave on the table. You enjoy the freedom, so you don't go to school. You don't take education valuable. You don't go because you're enjoying it. You're enjoying the freedom. Somebody else paid for it. So when you got whipped for it and got beat for it and the door opened, then you want your education. We got a group of young people that don't understand today that, and even some of our one of the things that I was telling some young people the other day, even some of our young people, when it comes down to working and advancing yourself and putting yourself up, some of the people that paid for these, never got an opportunity to enjoy the liberties that you have. So as young people, enjoy that, take advantage of that. Now, one gentleman I want you to remember, I want you to write this down. His name was Robert Small, and he was in Bruford, South Carolina. Robert Small took a ship during the Civil War, stole a ship. I think it was 17 passengers. He took the ship during the time of the Civil War, drove it upstream to the Union Army, and he stole it and delivered it up with artilleries and goods on the ship. He was smart enough at that time to take a ship and drive it up. So he stole the enemy's ship and took it up. So do some study on him. But I want to go back to this last scripture, and I want you to appreciate it. Appreciate the liberty that you have. It's in the book of Exodus, chapter 12. Exodus, the 12th chapter. I'm sorry, Deuteronomy chapter 16 and 12. Deuteronomy 16 and 12. Young people, now April, you made out my test. 16 and 12, it says this. 16 and 12. And thou shalt remember. Everybody, let's read that together. 16 and 12 of Exodus on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. And thou shalt remember that thou was what? Let's read it again on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Thou shalt observe the Feast of Tabernacles 7 days after thou hast gathered in the corn and the wine. I've read this because this is important when we talk about Black History Month and going over these things. When they have the Black Festival and the Black History, and we have all those cooked foods, and sometimes we dress in all those things. This is biblical. This is something that was done biblical because the Lord wanted to remember them to remember the struggle that they came from. Saints, it is so important that you connect with your struggle. It's so important that we as a church go back and remember the lives of these people who have died and have sacrificed and given so much that you can enjoy the privilege that you have today. And lastly, the fight isn't over. Let me tell you what has happened. In the 60s, people were blunt. In the 70s, they were blunt. Racism became institutionalized racism. So now it's not that somebody get out there and say, hey, you nigger. Not somebody get out there with the fire. It becomes institutionalized. So institutionalized now deals with stereotype. Institutionalized now deals with, I think I showed you all, when we put the nooses around our necks. That's no longer a noose thing. It's a gun thing now. Jobs and discrimination now is not because of, it's because now you got dreads. Because now your name is a certain name. It becomes now because you got a felony. It becomes now, so all of these become the institutional way of discriminating. And today, when you're fighting something invisible, most of you all don't even see what we're fighting because it has put itself into a place that it can't be seen. It's on your job. It's on your workforce. You don't know why you've been at a job 20 years and somebody been there 2 years and they just get moved up all of a sudden. You got all the skill. In fact, you trained them for the job and gave them all of the information to get the job, and you trained them, gave them all the information, and they get moved up, and you train them You go back and you got, if you work for any institution, if you work for a state institution, if you work for a government institution, I encourage you to go and do a 119 request and see what everybody make on your job. You got that right. I told somebody that recently. They came and they worked for the state. Now, you don't have to do that for a private. They work for a state. And everybody's stuff is open. If on one of those jobs they mistreat you, you can get any person on your job, including your boss, you can get their HR record. Anybody you work by, you can get their HR record. In fact, if they work and get government funding, if they get state funding, you can get it. So challenge it. Go look it up. Go look up what everybody pays. Look how long you've been there. Okay, you've been there such and such so many years. I work for the state. I work for the city. I work for this. You've been there. So anybody that's contracted with the state. So even if I have a contract, for instance, if I'm a contractor with the state and the state pays, I have a right to know what everybody makes because the state's paying that money. That's the law. So I want to know. You've been working there how many years? You do the same job I want to see if you make the same thing I make. Let me see. I want to see her H&R. I want to see her HR bar. I got disciplined for this. I want to see how many times she's been disciplined. Let me see that. You got the right to go call for the records. Statute 119. Go look them up and compare it. Because, see, that's the stuff that you don't see. She got hired for the job. What was her qualification? What was my qualification? He got hired for the job. What was his qualification? What was my qualification? That's for these, state jobs or city jobs. I think some of it apply. I think it does apply to the schools and all those as well. And you can't get the kids' records and all that, but the schools, it applies to all of them. So that's information that you don't see because a lot of it is done under the cover and you don't see it. So when you can't shoot an enemy that you don't know exists. You can't fight an enemy that you don't know exists. And in this generation, what I'm trying to do is open the eyes of the young people now that they can see it because most people can't recognize it. Most people can't see it. I've watched recently as things are going with this young man, the governor who painted his face, and he's adamantly trying to keep that job, painting his face, sitting beside the Ku Klux Klan person dressed up. That was 1984. They originally thought it was 55. That was 1984. Somebody asked, well, what is the big deal? This is the question you ask yourself, and I want to ask you this. If you have hated, and I'm going to use the word, if you've hated what you would say, niggers enough to lynch them, to kill them, to shoot them, to hang them, and can't stand them, and one day somebody simply says, all right, we're going to release all the blacks and white, we're going to come together, does that change hearts? Does that change minds? Does that change the thoughts of those people? There has never been a revival that changes the heart of the system. Now let me give you this. If I'm driving Sister Cowart's car and I'm going 55 miles an hour and it's already driving, it's already going a certain way, and I change drivers, it doesn't change the way that her van is driving. There's a system that was created racially. And because you change drivers don't mean that you change the system. America, from its very beginning, has been driving a racist system. And you can put whoever you want behind the wheel, it's still the same system. You got to stop, change the direction, and that ain't never happened. That never happened. So Kennedy was killed. 2 Kennedy brothers were killed. Martin Luther King was killed. All of these folk was killed. Now, murder is something heavy. That's heavy. When you get murder, that's heavy. And many of these people that in government offices were murderers, still had a murdering mind. That didn't change. And their sons inherited their jobs. And their sons' inherited their jobs. And many of them don't even know the bitterness that lies within their own heart. Many of them don't know what some folk don't really know what racism is. I was sitting down in Haines City. We was fighting for a cause with Shalonda's boy. And I was sitting down with a white gentleman. We were sitting down in the city hall. I was talking. I was getting ready, and he said, "I like niggers." He said that. He said, "I grew up with niggers, and I loved niggers. I had a lot of nigger friends." Now, he was about 85, 86. That's what he looked. Probably might have been 100. I don't know. But he when he said it, I didn't get upset with him because he perfectly thought that he was okay. Now, the difference is we know what the word nigger means, but he didn't use that word, like nigger. He used it because to him, that was an appropriate word being in the season that he grew up in, being in the time and era that he grew up in. He thought it was a perfect word. So what I'm saying today, and I hope you get it in your spirit, saints, we still got a long ways to go. And what the devil would want us to do is because we got our houses and we got our cars, we can go and eat in different places. He wants you to get to the point that you say that it's fine, it's good. Elder Porter called me about 3 or 4 weeks ago riding in his car. He called me on the phone and said, "Pops, I've got stopped here, and they got me stopped." So what they stopped me for? And I told him I got a gun. I told him I got a gun in my vehicle. I'm permitted. And they was just talking to him all kind of ways, just talking and talking. He had me on the phone. I'm listening to him. "Can I search your car?" He says, "No, you can't search my car. You don't have a right. Why you want to search my car?" "I want to search it." "You're not going to search my car." That was his right. That was his right. Now, some of y'all would have been there. "Well, just go and let him search the car." No, that's my car. Let me search yours. So some of y'all think that's defiant. No, that's not defiant. That's my right. You don't search my car. So they called the dogs and get the dogs over there and bring the dog. And the dog didn't get a hit, but he wanted to search his car. So he said no. And from that point on, they gave him a problem. I went to Sister Paula's house. Remember, police going to tell us he's going to come in the house. He said he had a search warrant. He didn't have a search warrant. And I stood at the door with him. You remember? Sat right on him. He said, "You're going to go in the house." I said, "You're not going in the house. You're not going in the house." "Oh, I have a right." I said, "Well, we will stay here. I guarantee you won't go in this house tonight." That's how I was going out. You were there. He said, and I'm not teaching you to be defiant, but I'm teaching you to know your rights. So I said, "You're going to go in the house?" I said, "Yes." I tell you just what I want you to do. I want you to show me your search warrant. And then you can go in the house if you want to show me your search warrant. I ain't got to show. I said, "Yes, you do have to show you. So show me your search warrant." I said, "In fact, this is what you do. Call your supervisor and tell them that I said they can't go in the house. And I'm sitting here and nobody's going in." Because I knew if he could go in the house, he'd have ran me over and ran back. So I knew he was lying. So he pulls out a arrest warrant, whatever it was. I think it was an arrest warrant. I said, "This is not a search warrant. Go home. Get off our property and go back home. Immediately. Leave. You have no right to be on the premises. Leave." We went down to court the other day with Scent down the road. You say whatever you want, whatever thoughts you have with Scent. Scent went and videoed these people harassing somebody, and when she videoed them harassing them, they got behind her and tell you what they did. Now, we got it on tape. I showed y'all on tape. I'm going to show you again. They got behind her, turned the light on, woo, 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 cut the light off, and went in the other direction. And then 2 or 3 days later, they came and arrested her, fleeing to a lewd. Said she was trying to flee. Look how smart he was. Cut the car light on, cut it off, went in another direction. And what he didn't know, that she taped it. She was facing years. She could have went 3 or 4 years for fleeing to a lewd. She got the tape. So we went to court about 30 or 40 strong, filled up the courtroom, pull out that tape. They didn't even go to the jury. This is what the public defender said. Said, "I got to really work now." So what you mean? I got to really work now. He said, "So many folk in here now, I got to really work." So if you got to really work, because there's so many people in here, what would you have done if you did not have to have this audience there? when Sister Sherry's nephew was being tried, I think it was her and I heard the attorneys afterwards talking about how they was going to do and what they was going to do. So there's a legal system problem. Not only that, there's a racial problem. You just don't see it. There's a school problem. You just don't see it. There's a funding problem. You just don't see it. There's a job problem. You just don't see it. Cross the right people as a black supervisor. It's all right for you to say something that one, but cross the right person, get the right one. So there's a system problem. So I'm hoping that through this and through these teachings in February, that it will help you to understand. Not only that, don't go on your job thinking all white folk is, because they're white people that fought in this struggle. I'm going to give you some names of the whites that lost their life. You saw about 3 or 4 that lost their life for the struggle. Now, what I'm saying, if these people are willing to come out of their comfort, we're going to have to be willing to come out of our comfort. Do what you need to do to help each other. Now, I've got something I'm getting ready to do down here. Cut the camera off. I'm getting ready to go this week.